All right, so of course today is the big day. Today is graduation day for the Modjeska Simkins School of Human Rights. And as your lead instructor this semester, I just want to say it has been an honor and a privilege to be not only your teacher, but to also be someone who has learned alongside you. I think that this school has been yet another wonderful example of what it means to not just be an activist, not just be an informed citizen, but to be someone who is hungry to learn, hungry to have a dialogue with others. And certainly when the class began back in March, none of us imagined how the next 3 months would turn out. Certainly, if you had told me this time last year that we'd be faced with a global pandemic and we'd be faced with the resurgence of Black Lives Matter, I would have been a bit surprised. But if nothing else, 2020 has been a year full of surprises, for better and for worse. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, I'm glad to see all of you here today, and we have some special guests as well. We have a really exciting agenda planned for your graduation today. So Brett, let me know when you're ready to get going with this particular graduation ceremony.
All right. Well, Becky, turn your volume down. What I'm going to do is to set this up with a short, as short as you can get Jim Campbell to be, a short introduction speech by Jim Campbell. And Jim is somebody that has been with us from the beginning, and that he has a tremendous history in the progressive movement, and that we'll hear from Jim as soon as I can figure out how to share my screen.
In 1946, Southern Negro Youth Congress met in Columbia, and many of the elders of the movement of the 70s were the young people then. Dr. Du Bois gave the major address at the Southern Negro Youth Congress at a college in Columbia, and the title of that speech was "Behold the Land." And they became mentors in the 60s. Esther Jackson, Dorothy Burnham, and Sally Davis, James Jackson, Louis Burnham, Herbert Aptheker, Paul Robeson, and Dr. Du Bois, who died on the eve of the Civil Rights March in '63 in Washington, but had relocated to Ghana. The current generation of activists that you represent are now entering into conscious activism that is organized and disciplined by the science of knowledge and development as elaborated in the practice and theory built upon a basic assumption that it is possible to know everything. That's the scientific basis of a quality education, that it is possible to know everything. We can learn and continue to evolve progressively as a unified, substantive democracy. Our current activism is more consciously aware that our freedom movement's longevity has been congenitally engaged in national political processes set into motion over 200 years ago, when a majority of the national population was bound in enslavement as private property. The first communities, the first commodities, and in use as the central labor energy upon stolen land in the creation of American capitalism, its seminal wealth, and the proliferation of that wealth that we have today in the American economic system. The organizing framework for all of this activity was elaborated in the call of "We the people of the United States of America," and the immersion of the country's central contradiction, which in that instance initiated the long civil rights or freedom movement. In a word, what we are engaged in and you are entering into is moving the American Revolution forward towards its ultimate success and completion. That's really where we are and what we are still doing. And here we are in a growing consciousness and understanding of our central role in a proposed democratic revolution set into motion over 238 years ago, which is still in the developmental process of reaching for a substantive democracy and its ultimate completion. Our challenge and activist work are clear. And this is where it takes you. How do people who were sold in the marketplace fit into a market economy? It takes you there to that question, which is the portal or the threshold to the next stage of our movement. How do people who were sold in the marketplace fit into a market economy? Good travel, good work, good study, and good activism to you, young people. Thank you.
We are truly honored and delighted to have Nikky Finney joining us this afternoon. For those of you who don't know, but I think everyone here knows who Nikky Finney is. She is indeed the voice of South Carolina and the voice of modern Black America in so many different ways. She is, of course, a winner of the National Book Award. She is currently a professor at the University of South Carolina. But Nikky Finney is so much more than that. She is a child of South Carolina. She is a child of the South. And whenever you read or listen to her poetry, you really get that sense of the history of the region. And really, I think Nikky Finney is someone who represents the best of the South. In recent weeks, we've had a lot of debates about the symbolism of the Confederate flag and Confederate statues and such as representing the South. I think that's absolute nonsense. It's people like Nikky Finney who really represent what the South can and should be. So I want to go ahead and turn the floor over to Nikky Finney right now. And then thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Can everybody hear me okay?
Hear you okay.
Okay. Wow. When Miss Marjorie reached out and asked me, would I be here, I canceled everything I had on my schedule. I was supposed to be in North Carolina today. Okay, I didn't really cancel going to North Carolina. I'm going tomorrow, but but I want you to know how moved I was, how prioritizing this is for me. All you have to do is say Miss Marjorie's name and Brett and Miss Modjeska, and I'm like turned around, my clock starts ticking in a different kind of way. So I appreciate, Robert, that introduction. I laugh a little bit when you call me the voice of South Carolina, because there's some people who wish I would leave and not keep opening my mouth, but we're not talking about them today. We're talking about us. I just want to say something to these amazing graduates. I thought it was 26. I think it's 24. It doesn't matter. If I say graduates of this program of the Modjeska Simkins School, you know who I'm talking to. I'm talking to you. And I just want to do a short little thing about 2 words that begin with the letter A. And one is being an autodidact. And I think it's really important to talk about this as you graduate from a program, right? Because being an autodidact, I didn't know what that was until I got in my 30s. And I kept saying, why do I have to go find all this information that I was supposed to be taught in school all along my life? They say they're educating me. They are not educating me fully. They're educating me about some things, and they're keeping a lot of the education out. That's what's so beautiful about the Modjeska Simkins School. And being an autodidact is when you say, I want to be educated without a master at the front of the room. I want to be educated without a formal teacher at the front of the room. I want to be in a circle of people who will educate each other. That's what partly being an autodidact is. And I just wish I had been in some of those classes. And I need to sign up for the next round of classes because I need to go through this learning and this understanding with you in a new kind of way. So I just want to plop that word down in your psyche to say that now that you have your walking papers from the Modjeska Simkins School, you still must be an autodidact. You must go looking for more information. You must keep searching for, because that's what Miss Simkins was. You know, she just was a learner, a everyday, what can I learn? What more do I need to learn? And so I teach this everywhere I go to anybody who will listen. Captive audiences count. That you must stay hungry for all the information that you have gotten and even the information that you don't know just yet. And that brother just before us was also talking about, right? The learning, the lifelong learning that must happen when you are an activist, because there's so much that has been kept from us. The second thing I want to talk to you about is the word audacity. When I was a little girl growing up in South Carolina, a little Black girl growing up in South Carolina, I was not taught to be audacious. In fact, I was talked out of being audacious. I was told to be smart, but audacious was not on the framework of what I was taught to be. Why? Because of the definition of the word audacious, audacity. If you look it up, the first definition says, definition number 1 says, a willingness to take bold risks, right? The second definition of audacity is rude or disrespectful behavior or impudence. One definition, bold and courageous. Second definition, rude, right? So what does that tell you? Those 2 definitions, I love studying the root language of words. When you are audacious, there will be people who will call you rude. But you're really being bold and courageous. And you must not worry about that. That's not your trouble. That's just it comes with the territory. But you must still embrace having the audacity to do what you need to. Why else would you take this class with Modjeska Simkins' name on it if you are not willing, as you walk out of it, right, to have some audacity in your life, or have some more audacity in your life than you had before you walked in? So I just want to turn us to that word, and I just want to tell you how I, as a little girl who wasn't given that word, began to wear it around my neck like a necklace, because I wanted to be more and more audacious, but not in the way that everybody else was being audacious, because we all have to be audacious in our own individual way. I can't be audacious like Miss Marjorie. I can't be audacious like Brett. I have to come through another door and be audacious like Nikki. So I'm quiet for the most part, but when I pick up a pencil, all bets are off. All bets are off. I can be in a room with you and I can have polite conversation, but when I'm coming at you with my audaciousness as a poet, that's different. You can come at me audaciously as a farmer or as a reporter or as somebody who works in a store doing something else, but you can be audacious in your own kind of way. So I just wanted to read one poem that reflects, I think, the kind of audaciousness that I'm hoping that you will hold on to, that you received in this program. I'm so thrilled to be here and to be a part of it. But I was living in Kentucky, and there was a small article in Jet magazine about before the Confederate flag came down, there was a march on the state capitol, and it was back in the 1980s, where, and this poem has an epigraph, and it says, Arthur Ravenel, Republican senator from South Carolina, called the NAACP the National Association for Retarded People at a Confederate flag support rally. He later said, I made a mistake. I feel badly about it because I said retarded people and I have a retarded son, quote, end quote. He also added, that does not mean that I'm apologizing to the NAACP. I read that. And I thought, well, I'm a girl from South Carolina. I can't talk about the Republican senator from South Carolina. Can I? Yes, I can. So in my audacious way, I wrote this poem called Hate that came through a window and not the front door, because I wanted to talk about what he said about his son, as well as what he said about the Confederate flag. So, hate. How does a father struggling, let me start over. How does a father with a son struggling to be seen whole in the eyes of the world forget the son long enough for a slip of the tongue to be recorded forever for posterity's sake? How does a father think that a son will never know what he said that day at the rally when he slipped and he, the father, revealed his true feelings about he, the son, the same feelings he feels about other different people? How does a father slip off one tongue while he is rallying his Confederate troops and slip on another later after the rally when he is home with his son, who is the gentle inheritor of his name? He does not. The slippery tongue is one and the same. What could make you forget your son? A fight over a flag? The heat from a simmering 100-year-old war? I'm telling you, hate stops at nothing, not even the sacred door to a son's private room. Audacity. You gotta have it in order to fight in this battle. And remember, the first definition is courage and boldness, and the second one is that people will call you impudent. They will say you are exhibiting bad behavior. And guess what? That's okay, because you know the truth about what you are doing and why you are doing it. I'm so proud of you. Blessings. I hope to make the next class. Thank you for this invitation.
We love you, Nikky Finney.
Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. That was a great poem, as always.
Thank you. Thank you.
Beautiful.
All right, well, in just a moment, I am actually going to turn the floor over to Marjorie Hammock to read out the names of this year's graduates. Before we do that, I did want to offer a special thanks to Todd Shaw and John Hale, who have joined me in this endeavor in teaching and leading the class this semester. It really could not have been the same class without them. And I think both Dr. Shaw and Hale have offered some unique perspectives and unique points of view on a wide range of topics we've discussed this semester. So please give them your digital or real hands of applause, please, if you can. And I also wanted to thank a couple.
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to thank a couple other guests that we had this semester too. Start of the semester, we had Chief Hatcher to join us, and later on we also had Ed Madden as well. The Modjeska School prides itself on bringing in guest speakers, and next year and years to come, we're certainly looking forward to bringing more guest speakers as well. Becky, did you have something to add to that as well?
Before you did whenever you're starting to read the graduate names, I had a short video to show.
Okay, please go right ahead.
Well, it might not be that easy, but let me see if I can figure this out. Okay. Well, do you know how to share screen? Okay. All right.
Oh, And just
Great job by Becky.
and
That
just
was fantastic.
to reiterate, so that you won't forget these wonderful names, I'm going to read them again. John Ado, Connie Barnes, Patricia Bonneau, Lillian, Boatwright, Cecil Cahoon, West Cloud, Julia Dawson, Bernie Gallman, Krista Gardner, Anita Garrett, Heather Green, John Hale, Nataris Harris, Annie McDaniel, Tiffany, namely, Rick Patalunas, I hope I didn't mess that up too much, Louis Pitts, Eva Perlow, A.B. Worrell, Felicia Robinson, Bakari Sadi, Allison Tarasio, Julie Tuttle, and Benjamin Twitty. Robert.
Congratulations, 2020 graduates of the Modjeska Simkins School of Human Rights.
Robert wanted to mention that we have, other than our adjunct professors, Dr. Shaw and Dr. Hale, we have recurring guest lecturers, Louis Pitts, who also signed up as a full-time student, and Professor Louis Burke, a retired law school professor whose specialty is Reconstruction lawyers. And so we want to thank them for coming back. And the wonder of having all this great talent in the Modjeska School gives me some relief that I can do other things. And it's quite clear that we need an IT person on staff. So if anybody wants to step up and volunteer, do so. And Nikki Finney is a real treat and a blessing to see her here, and that she's definitely going to be roped into class next year. And we don't know when that class is going to be. We're going to start doing skill sessions that are part and parcel to the organizer training. And again, reiterating that we started the Modjeska School with the concept of it being like a graduate level school to teach teachers. And we haven't, that was only the beginning, to get enough people to go out and teach the shorter courses. And so y'all are geared up now to go out and teach Democracy 101, which sums up all the problems, where they came from and what you can do about it in 30 minutes or less. And so everybody doesn't have to go through the 14 classes that you have been through. So we're going to have the short courses starting soon for the skill sessions, and be doing the Democracy 101 class, which teaches in a short way that which it is that people need to know to be effective citizens. Robert, Becky has another message from Gilda Cobb-Hunter.
Ready for that now?
Oh, yes, please, go right ahead.
Okay.
Hey y'all, Gilda Cobb-Hunter here. Congratulations on reaching this milestone, graduating from the Modjeska Simkins School. I want you to know what a great opportunity it is for me to be here via Zoom and just be able to chat with you for a couple of minutes about what you've done, and to really thank you for taking the time to learn more about South Carolina's other kind of history, and learn about the Progressive Network and the Progressive Movement here in South Carolina. I'm sure some of y'all were surprised, and particularly if, like me, you came here from another state, when you heard that there was a progressive movement here in South Carolina. I am proud to say that I am one of the original members. Brad and Becky says that I am a co-founder. I think my dear friend, the late Rep. Joe Neal, was the real co-founder, but at any rate, because of the work that the network does, I am proud to associate myself with it, and just really, really want you to know that the value of what you have learned these last several sessions, learning about civil rights, about social justice, about how it works here in South Carolina, is something that I hope you will remember, but not just remember it, if we are really to make change in South Carolina, we are going to have people like you who are willing first and foremost to learn what they don't know, and then who are willing to take that learning and share it. And so I applaud you for your interest, for your commitment in sticking with it and being here today, graduating. And so if I could switch hats, and I consider, I am a legislator, for those of you who don't know, I have had the honor and privilege of representing House District 66 for the last 29 years in the South Carolina House. And as a legislator, I can't tell you how valuable it is to have the Progressive Network as the consistent voice of progressives in South Carolina. The network has been the go-to place for me when I am looking at issues about social justice, equal justice, you name it. If it's an issue that will improve the lives of working people here in South Carolina, I can count on the network from the standpoint of research, policy, just anecdotal, just being, putting me in touch with real people who have actually experienced the issue that I am working on. And so it's invaluable to me as a resource for legislation that interests me. I am all about working people, and the network has done that. And I have to say, when we came to, my husband and I moved here to South Carolina, Modjeska Simkins was still alive. And I was an admirer then. I just liked her grit. I liked her plain spokenness. I liked her fierceness and her fearlessness. She was the kind of woman who would say what she had to say. In the words of the civil rights struggle, she made it plain. And you really were clear on what she said and what she meant by what she said. I really wish there were more Modjeska Simkins in this state and in this country. I want to challenge you. You're graduating today, but I want to challenge you to say, what are you going to do with that knowledge? And I'll put in a plug for membership in the Progressive Network. For those of us who have been around for a minute, we welcome new voices to this work. We welcome new faces to the struggle. You came and you entered through the Modjeska Simkins School. I don't know how many of you are actual members or have contemplated becoming members of the Progressive Network, but in order for us to be effective and keep growing the movement, we've got to have new voices and additional bodies to help do the work. So my challenge to you is to take what you've learned from the Modjeska Simkins School and to join the Progressive Network and help us with this work, help us with this struggle, because y'all, I'm here to tell you, as my grandma used to say, it's more than a notion. When you take on causes that are not popular, and that's the one thing I like about the network. There are a lot of organizations who work on what they call social justice issues. And they may do it for a minute and then something else more fashionable comes along and they drop it. What I can truly say about the Progressive Network is that it is the only organization that I am aware of here in South Carolina that has consistently, for the last 25 years, worked on progressive causes, worked on progressive issues, really employed this notion of agitate, agitate, agitate. I am beginning to ramble, so I'm going to stop at this point and end my comments to you by saying congratulations again. I am so very proud of all of you. There is much work to do. I hope that you agree and will roll up your sleeves and get her done, because we are living in some different times, some real transformative times I believe that these times now call for an organization like Progressive Network to finally push over the finish line some of the things that we have been working on for 20, 25 years, trying to get it done. Bottom line is the South Carolina Progressive Network has made a difference, and with your help and your involvement, will continue to make a difference for working people here in South Carolina. Take care, good luck, and thanks for allowing me to join. Bye.
Bye.
The woman has been an inspiration for as long as I've known her, and I met her shortly after she took office in 1992. And we had been in the Grove building by that time since '77, waiting for her and Joe Neal to become the first progressive politicians in South Carolina that were at least had a class consciousness and a fighting spirit. And Gilda's standing by to serve all of us as we serve her. I did want to mention the most important person that we have here that I don't think is, that I've expressed my appreciation for, is Dr. Robert Greene. Without having somebody that's a professional historian who has an understanding of class struggle and the need for radical social change, it'd be some old guy like me making this stuff up. So thank you very much, Dr. Greene.
Well, thank you. I mean, the honor and pleasure has been mine over these last 2 years to lead the Modjeska School. And I did want to add on a personal note that really working with you guys has reminded me of why I decided to become a historian in the first place. When I was a young boy, I think I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, my father came to my class and as part of like a parent class day of interaction, he read to my fellow students a book about the Civil War that said the war was about slavery. Now, this isn't a revolutionary thought, but it seemed in that classroom way back in 1993 or thereabouts that for most of the folks there was the first time they ever heard that the Civil War was about slavery. I can remember being in the 8th grade when one of my favorite teachers told me that Malcolm X was actually a bad person. And I remembered thinking to myself for the first time in my life, what this teacher is telling me sounds wrong. I couldn't quite place my finger on it, but something told me it wasn't quite correct. It's in that spirit that I've come to you this semester. And I really enjoy learning, not just teaching you, but learning from all of you as well. Each of us in this class has a unique perspective, a unique story, a unique opportunity through which we can change the world around us. And whether that change is big or small, that change will be important regardless of the size of that particular change. I think it's funny that the video that we watched earlier showing our first and only in-person meeting reminded me of the fact that the last time I was in a classroom was for the Modjeska School. I have unfortunately not been able to step back on campus at Claflin University since things have closed down. And really, this has been my academic home in a lot of ways since then. Even though I've been teaching a bunch of classes for Claflin and such, even though I've been involved in seminars and webinars and such, I think the Modjeska School has been a unique opportunity for me to refresh my feeling about why history matters and why history is so important to us even in 2020. Hopefully, some of us, if not all of us, will make history in our own small, special way. But above all, I really hope to see you guys around, and I really hope to see you guys agitating some more, however you see fit to do so. Brett, anything else you want to add for the good of the order this afternoon?
Becky?
Brett, this is Marjorie.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd just like to also thank Robert Greene for an extraordinary experience. And remember, this is my second time in the class. I'm a slow learner, so I had to do it again. But it was just extraordinary, and I thank you, and I thank Todd and my fellow classmates. Just a wonderful experience. And thank you also, Ms. Finney, for joining us. Truly a sister of the South, from some very distinguished lineage, I might add.
Could I just add my thanks to everybody, especially for all our bumbling and your patience, and you really did rise to the occasion without complaint, and you stuck with us through a really challenging time. And I just wanted to hear from anybody that cared to share their thoughts about the last several months, or what they got out of it, or anything at all.
Well, I'll start out by saying that I learned a great deal, and I also not only learned information, but I learned a different way of looking at some things. And I do appreciate the effort. Marjorie, I plan to be like you and take it again next year.
Okay.
And I would like to get a copy of Pomp and Circumstance.
That's our latest fundraiser.
Okay.
I'll send the files of all of the speakers to you, and the whole thing will be recorded, unfortunately, for posterity, warts and all.
One additional thing I wanted to add. Thank you very much for Jim Campbell. And I worked with him in New York. So it was a delight when I found out that he was already here when I moved here. He's an extraordinary man, as you all well know. And he posted something today, as a matter of fact, that you might want to look at.
That if I had not been trying to be an IT person, I would have introduced Jim by saying that he's 96 today. Mm-hmm. And when we did our recognition of the Southern Negro Youth Congress 70th birthday, we had just exhumed that history. We learned about it in 2015, and so in 2016 was the 70th anniversary, and we arranged a massive show that the university came in and basically stepped on and took over and hosted the replay of the famous W.E.B. Du Bois speech at Tisdale Chapel at Benedict. And I tried to get Jim to come, and he said he's too old, he doesn't drive anymore, he can't come. And I get there to the chapel, there's Jim on the front row. And we had invited, and she came, Dorothy Burnham, who is a young woman in her 20s, was one of the drivers of the Southern Negro Youth Congress. And that's one of the things that is worth lifting up again, is that the women were running the show there. A lot of the men were at war, but the women had this aggressive and assertiveness and assumption that all true revolutionaries are guided by, and Dorothy was there. Dorothy came down to this event that we did in Columbia. And I walk up and say, Jim, what are you doing here? You said you couldn't come. He said, well, when a 104-year-old lady calls you and says, don't play the old card with me, buddy, you better show up, you show up. And so Dorothy was 104 when she came, and Jim loaded up in his big Lincoln and drove to Columbia when he was a young 94. So thank you, Jim and Dorothy.
Brett, what he posted was a history of women and suffrage with a lot of emphasis on African-American women, and the most gorgeous picture of Ida B. Wells I've ever seen. So take a look.
Other comments from the class?
Well, I'll just say that every day more and more, I believe, as the saying goes, we are the ones that we've been waiting for. And it has been truly rich to hear from all of the presenters, Dr. Greene. I'm really inspired to see a grassroots effort that is, like many, inspired by Black women. So we appreciate Sister Modjeska, but also that's not just making noise, but is clearly, evidently making some substantial change by marrying the grassroots and the public policy with some persistence. So I appreciate, and I probably, like Brother Gallman will be back in the class. There was just so much. I mean, my head was exploding every class and couldn't write and type fast enough. So I'm glad it was recorded so I can go back and review it, but might even be back in the class next year. Thank you, Brett et al.
Well, thank you so much for that. We really appreciate you joining us this semester, Anita. And anybody else have any comments about the class? Anything they enjoyed? Any thoughts that come to mind thinking about our semester together?
Yeah, I'll just make a quick comment. Yeah, I agree with all the commentators. I mean, it was a lot of work. It was more than I expected, but it was well worth it. I definitely learned a lot. But I'm sitting here in Myrtle Beach, so I haven't. For me to do it in previous years was to go to Columbia, which was not going to work out. So this pandemic may have presented the opportunity, especially when the new building gets going and everything, to branch out across the state. More, Zoom meetings, more internet, however it happens. But there are people that are a long way from Columbia who can get connected, and I'm one of them. And I wouldn't have done this without Zoom. That's for sure. And it presents, if it can work out to expand it, that it presents a lot of opportunities to other people throughout the state who probably have an interest.
Thank you, Rick. I want to point out that I tried to talk Lillian Boatwright out of deciding that she was going to drive from Clemson for every class. And fortunately for Lillian, we had a pandemic and she didn't have to drive, but she's attended. And while she's attending, she became a board member of the Pickens County Board of Elections, which is an excellent place that many of us need. It's a tough job, but understanding who made the rules is something most people don't understand, and Lillian does now. And that we're looking forward to working with Lillian on that. And that the policy work that Gilda spoke of, that's what we do best. The Modjeska School is to help train you up so you can help do that. And so do stay tuned and remember that we've got a lot of projects, and I didn't get the practicum suggestions that you gave out at class 10 typed up to send out. So we'll be sending that out and continuing to work with you to best utilize your wills and ability. So Robert, take us home, or see if anybody else has something to say.
I have one more thing. And I was going to share this with you about Nikki. And she has written a poem, which happens to be one of my many favorites, called Dancing with Strom. And I would add it to a historical review of anything, because it, again, gives you such a sense of what this state is about. So I would suggest that you read.
I would like to have an opportunity to say, as with some of my colleagues, that I perhaps may be in the class again myself. Having worked many years with the NAACP and having an opportunity to see some of my colleagues and being in the classroom with them that I have not seen or participated with for several years have given me an opportunity to reconnect, if you will. What I have always appreciated is history. And even more so, having an opportunity to be in the class. As a pastor of a predominantly Caucasian church, sometimes history is not embraced in a way that help to foster a good working relationship, because the history, particularly in South Carolina, has to bring to the forefront the issue of slavery. And too often that history wants to be forgotten, sadly. So this class for me has opened up a fresh, we say in the church, anointing for telling the story even more so. Because even a biblical story is history in its nature. And the more opportunities we have to talk about how did we get here, I think the better prepared we can be for changing some of the social ills in our community. So I want to thank Dr. Greene and particularly my friend Brett, whom I haven't seen in many, many moons, for leading this and continuing to fight. I will just continue to be an advocate for history and how important it is that we take the time to learn how we got here so that we will not repeat some of the mistakes, some of the hurt pain from the past. So I want to say thank you to all my colleagues who've been a part of this, and to say I look forward perhaps to seeing you all in the next class as well.
Thank you, Reverend Barnes, and I trust that you'll be a change agent within the United Methodist Church.
I will do my best.
All right then. Well, this has again been a great semester, a great group of folks that we've all gotten to know each other quite well. I do want to also say, by the way, don't be a stranger. If you want to reach out after the class is over with to me personally via email or what have you, more than happy to hear from you as well. And certainly when the next class is announced, don't be shy to join up with that class as well. And as Brett has mentioned, we're going to try to plan other events, other skill meetings, etc. As for a class in the fall, I'm not quite sure yet. I know either there'll be one in the fall or one next spring. To be completely honest and transparent, part of it is I'm waiting to see how things are going to work out in terms of this fall at Claflin and other universities, because we're still in the process. Although we've announced that we're going to be on ground this fall, I'm not really sure if that's going to be the case or not. But what I will say is that we will have plenty of additional opportunities to learn via the Progressive Network, via the Modjeska Simkins School of Human Rights. And I hope all of you take advantage of those opportunities, and certainly reach out to other Modjeska graduates as well to work on projects, to just get to know each other and so forth. Again, you have been an exemplary cohort to work with, and I wish you nothing but the absolute best in all your future endeavors.
Mm-hmm. And Robert, let me just add for 1 second, a great word of thanks to Brett Bursey, to Becky Robbins, the members, the staff and leadership of the Progressive Network. I'm just going to say this really quickly to say, Brett, thank you for being the gadfly that you are, the person who will not take a no. And that Brett, and I think, I'm not going to speak on John Hale's behalf, but I appreciate your persistence. You finally said, you know, show all the things that you're interested in. Why don't you come on in? And so I appreciate you, Brett, for being persistent about it. You got me in now.
I guess I'll say thank you, Todd. We got John too. We're getting John in the boat.
But it was a grand, but more importantly, it's a great and grand pleasure, good folks. I appreciate your patience with us as faculty, and it was a phenomenal class. It was really a phenomenal class. By the way, Reverend Barnes, you sent me a very kind note, and my apologies, I am going to respond. So just wanted you to know that.
Gotta move.
Thank you so much for that acknowledgement. I was wondering about that. So I look forward to having conversation with you. Thank you.
Well, Robert, I don't want to torture anybody to talk, so let's toast each other and turn off our screens and relax. So this has been an exhausting time for me, as I know all of you have been. And my crises are like lined up like airplanes used to be over Charlotte Airport. So
Ta-ta.
Congratulations, everybody. You were awesome. And I'm
Bye-bye.
Ashe.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
Godspeed.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.